The NFL draft is coming, and it's going to be another big night for the University of Georgia, a big 3 days for the University of Georgia. Let's go deep inside the numbers and talk about what it all means for Georgia, for Kirby Smart, and for the potential of Kirby one day being called the greatest college football coach of all time. Yeah, we're going to go there today on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. I am Daniel, and today let's talk about the NFL draft. But really, let's not talk about the NFL draft. Let's talk about Kirby Smart and the dynasty that he's building. The Kirby Smart Death Star, if you will, that he is getting up and running in Athens. Today's episode brought to you by the Leatherman. Ben got us some more numbers. I got a whole cell phone full of numbers here that I am going to regale you with. And some of these are pretty fascinating. There's a lot of ways that you can measure greatness in a college football coach. First of all, thanks for listening, for watching, for downloading, for subscribing on all these audio platforms. Clint's going to be on tomorrow with John Garcia talking about some recruiting news that you are not going to want to miss. And so if you missed any of our G-Day breakdown, those episodes were Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week. And so go back and check those out. Thank you so much to the 199. Thanks for everybody that makes this podcast the first listen of their day. And let's jump in here to these numbers. As the draft approaches, I thought that would be a great way to just discuss Kirby's greatness so far in his first 6 full seasons at the helm of the University of Georgia. So not including this draft class, because we obviously don't know what's going to happen this week, or next week. But in his first 6 full seasons at the helm in the University of Georgia, how does Kirby Smart stack up just in terms of players drafted into the NFL? Again, all of these stats, once again, brought to you by the Leatherman, the official stat guru, the official data spreadsheet aficionado of the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. And so, Ben, thank you as always for this. Kirby's had 45 players drafted in 6 years. Now, that might seem like a lot to you. And in fact, it is a lot. It is the third most of all time by any coach in their first 6 seasons taking over a program. Tied number one is Jim Tressel in his first 6 years at Ohio State and Larry Coker in his first 6 years at Miami. Now, that includes 2017, Kirby's first year, where only one player from the University of Georgia was drafted. One Georgia Bulldog drafted in 2017. It was Isaiah McKenzie, I think. One guy off that team went in the NFL draft, meaning, no offense to Mark Richt, but meaning Kirby Smart didn't exactly take over a program that was littered with NFL talent. Meanwhile, Jim Tressel, Larry Coker had 8 players and 11 players drafted, respectively, in each of their first seasons at the helm, indicating to you that the talent was deep on those teams when they took them over. In Kirby's first 6 years, 1 player, 6 players, 7 players, 7 players, 9 players, 15 players last season, 45 players in 6 years. He's had 9 3-stars or less drafted in 6 years. Kirby is just a recruiter. Kirby can't develop talent. These are the kinds of narratives that lazy people used to spout off, used to run their mouth and talk about 9 3-star or less players drafted into the NFL in only 6 years. He's had 20 4-stars drafted, meaning 29 of the 45 players that have been drafted in Kirby's 6 years at the helm at Georgia have been not 5-star players. So, does Kirby get the best athletes in the country? Yes, he does. Is that the only reason that he gets players drafted into the NFL? Absolutely, it is not. So, first 6 years on the job, Kirby is at 45. That's third most all time. Let's say that he has at least 5 players drafted in this NFL draft. Spoiler alert. He's going to have at least 5 players drafted in this NFL draft. That's going to put him first in his first 7 years as a head coach in terms of players drafted, meaning no coach in the history of college football in their first 7 years as a head coach will have ever had more players drafted into the NFL than your coach, Georgia fans, Kirby Smart of the Georgia Bulldogs. Even just that, if that were the only thing that I were going to get on here and talk to you about, that should make you excited. Because when Broderick Jones, when Keely Ringo, when Jalen Carter, when Nolan Smith, when Darnell Washington, when Christopher Smith, when all these guys get drafted, when Stetson Bennett, all these guys get drafted, he's going to be miles ahead of any other coach in the history of college football in his first 7 seasons. And that's going to happen next week during the draft. But I've got so much more for you, because not only has Kirby started strong, but Kirby has a chance to sustain and be not just the greatest starting coach in the history of college football, but the greatest coach in the history of college football. More on that when we come back. But first, want to let you know about Built Bar. Built Bar, you know, if you've listened to this podcast before, is my favorite protein bar. It is my favorite meal replacement on the go, post-workout. You come home from the gym and you need a little bit of protein. You could mix together some sort of a powdery, disgusting nonsense, or you could have a Built Bar. 100% real chocolate. They come in a million delicious flavors, fruit flavors, caramel flavors. All of them are high in protein. All of them are high in fiber. All of them are low in sugar. All of them are keto approved. Whatever diet, whatever meal plan you are on, Built Bar is the bar for you. Throw one in your glove box. Throw one in your desk drawer for that afternoon snack. It is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. You can feel like you're eating a candy bar in the middle of the day, but actually be doing something that's not going to inevitably kill you in a couple of years. Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on planet Earth. Go to Built.com right now. Enter the promo code LOCKEDON. You get 15% off your first order. That's Built.com. You can also get these bars at Costco, at CVS, at Walgreens. Wherever you find great tasting protein bars, Built Bar is likely to be there. Built.com. Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on planet Earth. All right. So we said Kirby Smart, the best starting head coach in the history of college football. Now, maybe you're thinking there's some other notable coaches in the history of college football. I wonder where they stack up in comparison to Kirby Smart on this list. Kirby Smart, again, we said first 6 seasons, he's sitting at number 3 all time in terms of players drafted in the NFL with 45. Dabo Swinney comes in at number 12 all time on this list in his first 6 seasons at Clemson, at 28 players drafted into the NFL. Lane Kiffin, his first 6 seasons as a head coach in college football, 25 players. He's at 15. Will Muschamp, in his first 6 seasons as a head coach in college football, at Florida and South Carolina. 21 on the list with 23 players drafted. Gus Malzahn, 27th all-time. Dan Mullen, 44th all-time with 18 players drafted. That is 1/3 of the amount of players that Kirby Smart has had drafted. Dan Mullen did in his first 6 seasons. Urban Meyer in his first 6 seasons in college football. 49th on the list at 17. And look, there's Nick Saban. 68th all-time in his first 6 seasons as a head coach with 14 players drafted into the NFL. Now you're thinking to yourself, I can already hear you. You're thinking to yourself, well, Nick Saban, Daniel, I don't know if you know this, didn't start off at Alabama. He started off at Michigan State. Now maybe you thought I was unaware of that, but it turns out I was aware of that. And you're right. Nick Saban spent his first 5 years at Michigan State and then 1 season at LSU. That was what those first 6 seasons comprised of. What if we were to just take Nick Saban's first 6 seasons, I don't know, at Alabama? What if we just go straight to his tenure? He's already won a national championship. He's already been a failed NFL coach. So it feels like that's giving him a bit of a head start over Kirby Smart, who's literally starting his first head coaching vacancy, taking over a Mark Richt team, again, that had 1 NFL player on it. 1. So maybe that's an unfair thing to do for Nick Saban. What if I told you that in those first 6 seasons at Alabama, Nick Saban had 33 players drafted into the NFL? That's 33. Whereas in Kirby Smart's first 6 seasons at the University of Georgia, first 6 seasons ever coaching, he has had 45 players drafted into the NFL. Kirby Smart has had the fastest, most historic start of any coach in college football history. Now, we're looking at NFL draft picks right now. And as I said, next week when the draft happens, he's going to take over number 1 in his first 7 seasons as a college football head coach in terms of NFL draft picks. That's only one metric that we could look at. Let's look at player development. Look at all these 3-stars that he's gotten into the league. Let's look at, winning games. Winning percentage in his first 7 seasons as a head coach. Let's look at, what's another thing we could look at? Championships won in his first 7 seasons as a head coach. And let's compare that to any of the other names that we've been talking about. Championships won, players sent to the NFL. No coach in college football history has ever started as strong and as fast than Kirby Smart has at the University of Georgia. But that doesn't mean that Kirby's going to be the greatest coach of all time. He has to be able to sustain it. Can he sustain it? That's the question that the 199 and I are going to talk about coming up right after this. All right, 199, we're here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. bonfire.com/store/the199. Get the merch, get the shirts. We got a hat coming. We're working on a hat right now. All of it available at the store. Thanks so much for being a faithful third segment listener. If you're here, and let's chat about sustaining. My favorite moment of G-Day, we didn't talk about, didn't come on the field, and there were some great moments on the field. I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking about the pass that Carson Beck threw to Brock Bowers and wondering how anyone in the world would not pick us to win the national championship. That wasn't my favorite moment from G-Day. My favorite moment from G-Day was in the post-game press conference. Kirby Smart gets his usual happy to watch the guys compete, toughness, it was hot outside, the weather update, all the typical things that you hear from a coach after a game. He gets all that out of the way. And then Kirby comes in, he's asked a question, and the first thing out of his mouth, he can't wait to tell you, is we are built to sustain. at the University of Georgia. We're not a one-trick pony. We're not a one-hit wonder. He proved that last year when we went back-to-back national championships. We're not a two-hit wonder either. This Georgia team is going to be around for a long time. Kirby is not trying to have the fastest start of any coach in college football. He is built to sustain. And he's watched the greatest coach to ever do it so far do that over the course of 25 years. Nick Saban, in his first 26 seasons as a head coach, his only 26 seasons as a head coach, has had 149 players put into the NFL draft. In the last 11 years, from 2011 to 2021, Nick Saban has been a juggernaut of putting guys into the NFL draft consistently year after year after year. Kirby has a long way to go before he could ever be considered the greatest of all time. But as our friend Ben Leathers points out, greatest of all time includes the future. All time is a period of time that includes both now and into the future. And so the reality is that nobody knows who the greatest college football coach of all time is. What we mean when we say that is the greatest of all time so far. But GOATS doesn't sound as great. Greatest of all time, though, includes a period of time that we don't yet know about. Kirby Smart may very well become the greatest college football coach of all time. What he has to do, which is no small feat to do that, is sustain a level of excellence that he has begun at Georgia for decades. But again, he's got such a head start on anything that Nick Saban has been able to do. He's got a head start in terms of championships. He's got a head start in terms of recruiting. He's got a head start in terms of players drafted. He's got a head start in terms of facilities, in terms of culture, in terms of everything that is required to build a long-term successful program. Nick Saban never dreamed in his first 6 years of accomplishing the things that Kirby Smart has done in his first 6 years in Athens. Can he sustain it? Listen, give me a reason why he can't. I've yet to hear one person explain to me with any credibility whatsoever, even one reason why I shouldn't assume that Kirby Smart's going to keep winning at Georgia. Now, he's not going to win a championship every season. I mean, he might, but he's probably not going to win a championship every season. But he's going to have successful teams every season. He's going to have teams competing for championships every season. And he's going to put players into the NFL every single season. Every NFL draft is going to be a showcase for the University of Georgia. Obviously, they broke every draft record that there was last season. This season probably won't be another 15 spot that they put on the board. But let me just ask you this. If you're banking on Kirby falling off, in 2017 there was one player drafted from the University of Georgia. Do you think that there's going to be another year under Kirby Smart where only one player gets drafted from the University of Georgia? Do you think there's going to be a year under Kirby Smart, serious question, where less than 5 players get drafted from the University of Georgia? Think about all the talent we returned onto this team. Look at the defensive side of the ball. Look at all the players who are back from this year's team. And still there's going to be 7 or 8 guys drafted when all is said and done from this year's Georgia team. And this is kind of a low class. I'm telling you, next year, it's not going to be 7 or 8. It's going to be back into double figures. The year after that, we talked about this young talent on this team. It's insane. Kirby Smart is built to sustain at the University of Georgia. And the Leatherman makes a very compelling case that when all is said and done, there's no reason to think that he will not become the greatest college football coach of all time. The only thing that could stop him at this point is if he decides to stop, if he decides he doesn't want to do it anymore. So I guess if you're a Florida fan, that's what you're hoping for? I don't know. I mean, if you're a Florida fan, what do you even hope for at this point? You got Billy Napier. You're going to run him out of town. Maybe after this season? Maybe you'll give him one more season? I don't know. You regret letting go of Dan Mullen at this point? Like, that's where you're at if you're a Florida fan? Kirby Smart is, in my mind, he's already the greatest of all time because nobody's done what he's done in college football. Nobody's stepped into a program that's been in a 40-year drought and just said, you know what, we're going to take everything from everyone and we're going to become the standard in college football and we're going to do it like that. That's what Kirby Smart's done, and he's showing no signs of slowing down at this point. This has been the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. Again, Clint will be back tomorrow with John Garcia talking recruiting news. You are not going to want to miss that episode, and we will be back and see you guys next week after that.